Hello and welcome to the episode 344 of What a Fab Day. I am your host, Simon Mas. A return to Liverpool, the signing of a contract, and a world premiere are among the stories we'll tell during this episode. On the 10th of December 1960, after staying behind a good 10 days in Hamburg, West Germany, John Lennon decided to return to Liverpool. In episodes 325, 333 and 334, we saw how George Harrison, Pete Best and Paul McCartney were deported back to England, but John decided to stay put and not contact them on his return. Stuart Sutcliffe was then the only Beatle who remained in West Germany. He spent an initial period hidden away by Astrid Kircher, who would eventually become his fiancée. Sutcliffe got a permit to stay and returned to Liverpool in late January 1961, leaving the Beatles behind. 1 year later, in 1961, the Beatles had quite a day. The quartet, still featuring Pete Best on drums, managed to sleep only a few hours after the disastrous evening in the south of England on the previous day. In the afternoon, at the Casbah Coffee Club, the band met with Brian Epstein and signed his management contract in front of his lawyer, Rex Macking, and Brian's assistant Alistair Taylor, who served as a witness to the deal. It's not clear whether it was for the tiredness from the night before or the celebration within the band for the historic moment, but in his The Complete Beatles Chronicle, Beatles historian Mark Lewison maintains that the Beatles were so late for their evening engagement at the Hambleton Hall in Liverpool that they could only perform a 15-minute set. Allegedly, Epstein was waiting with the crowd to see them performing, and he was appalled by this lack of professionality and by the fact that the band demanded and obtained the full £15 engagement fee from the promoters, while Hill and Vic Anton, that was about £280 in 2020 money. Things would change very quickly under Epstein's watch. On this date in 1962, the Beatles, in their definitive lineup with Ringo Starr on drums, played a lunchtime concert at the Cavern club in Liverpool. On the 10th of December 1963, there was another date of the Beatles' autumn tour of the UK, this time at the Gaumont cinema in Doncaster. And, as it was becoming usual, the Beatles were interviewed again in their dressing rooms. This time, the task was accomplished by BBC's Dibs Matter, an Australian journalist that used to tape interviews for the BBC's transcription service overseas distribution. It then came to happen that non-British audiences were the first ones to hear John Lennon's Neville Club, a piece of poetry that was later included in his first book, In His Own Right, published in 1964. Talking about 1964, on this date, Ringo Starr finally left the London's University College Hospital after the successful removal of his tonsils. Another tour in 1965 with the Beatles on the stage of the Odeon cinema in Hammersmith, London. On this day, Enemy Readers poll results were announced. The Beatles were voted Best British Group and Best World Group, while John Lennon was voted British Vocal Personality of the Year. And now, before I jump into the future, I'll be allowed to remind you that your support is fundamental for me to keep going on producing the best content I can. As usual, the link to www.simonmas.com/support is in the episode description, but you already know what to do. Even a quick comment does show me that all the work I've put into this podcast is worth it, and it energizes me to keep on going. Donations, sales of my albums, and of the exclusive NFTs with the deluxe version of this podcast, all are extremely welcomed, but you don't need to spend money to show me your appreciation. Thank you. 3 years down the line, on the 10th of December 1968, John Lennon was at the Stonebridge House in London to rehearse his appearance on the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus, an attempt by the band to come up with a TV special. The show was revolving around the Circus theme and included several guest musicians including Jethro Tull, Marianne Faithfull, The Who, and Ty Jamal, and a host of talents from Sir Robert Fawcett's Circus. The project, shot by Michael Lindsay Hogg, was meant to be a way to promote the Rolling Stones' Beggars Banquet, but it ended up being released only in 1996. The actual filming started today, but while John was present on the set, his performance was filmed on the 11th of December. 1969. George Harrison took part to the Delaney and Bonnie concert in Copenhagen, Denmark, at the Falconer Theatre. It was the first time a Beatle had returned in the city after their 1964 concert with Jimmy Nicol on drums. Even if it was only 5 years, it seemed like a lifetime ago now. Back in London, instead, John Lennon and Yoko Ono met the parents of the so-called A6 murderer in John's Apple office. James Hanratty, that was the name of the killer, had been arrested for murder, attempted murder, and rape for events happened in 1961, and his family was fighting against the conviction, arguing that the evidence was insufficient. Hanratty was first rehabilitated in 1997 and then proven guilty beyond doubt in 2002 thanks to DNA evidence. On this note, I think it's time to wrap up this episode. Join me tomorrow for the filming of John's bit for the Rolling Stones Rock and Roll Circus and more. For the moment, I wish you a good day and a fab continuation. Simon Mas, music you love.